Ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome. Please welcome to the stage Metropolitan Land Council, Miss Yvonne Weldon.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, sisters and brothers. My name is Yvonne Weldon. I am a Wiradjuri woman from Cowra, here in New South Wales. I'm from the waters of the Clare, which is also known as the Lachlan, and of the Murrumbidgee Rivers. I am the elected chairperson of the Metropolitan Local Aboriginal Land Council, who are the cultural authority under the Aboriginal Land Rights Act for the land that we're on. I would like to pay my respects to all elders past and present, to all First Nations, to you, and the many nations of lands that are represented virtually tonight. A welcome to country is an age-old tradition. It is more than just words, it is a spiritual process. By honouring their ancestors' footsteps, we are all walking in, continuing the practice of the many generations before us to the many generations to come. The boundaries of our traditional owners are written into the earth's natural landscapes. The boundaries of the Eora are the Hawkesbury River in the north, the Nepean in the west, and the Georges River in the south. On behalf of the Metropolitan Local Aboriginal Land Council, the elders and the members, I welcome everyone to the land of the Gadigal. I acknowledge the Gadigal people and also the many nations of people and lands represented virtually tonight, whose spirits and ancestors will always remain with these lands, our Mother Earth. Across this continent, there are hundreds of nations, tribes and clans that have existed here for over 60,000 years. My people are the oldest living culture of the world. And as we're all joined here this evening and also online, either from the people of this continent or across the globe, let us all remember and acknowledge the many warriors that created pathways for all of us, the ones recognised and the ones we've never heard of. My people have always listened and learnt from each other, the environment, animals, elements and our ancestors. We don't live in isolation of body, culture, spirit, land and water because we are one. For in our blood it runs. So we need to reflect upon the footsteps we're leaving to know where we're heading, shaping our society, a country we can be proud of. And in these times of this pandemic, don't let the social distance make us socially absent. We must maintain physical distancing, but not creating barriers to our social connections. We need to be connected even more so today, more than ever. So whether it's through your work or your networks, creating an inclusion, an acceptance and a resilience, we can achieve positive change because we are in this together, each and every day towards a reconciled future, bringing my people, your people and all our peoples together. So let us all draw upon my people's spirit as we continue on our journey. May my people's spirits walk with you and guide you as we strive forward for us all. Again, on behalf of the Metropolitan Local Aboriginal Land Council, welcome to Gadigal land. This always was, always will be Aboriginal land. Thank you and have a wonderful evening.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage country head of Klarna, Australia and New Zealand, Fran Herrera.
You can feel it all over. You can feel it all over.
Good evening, everyone. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Fran Herrera, and I'm the Country Head of Australia and New Zealand. I'm so excited to welcome you to this stunning venue and to be able to live stream tonight's event. Klarna Smoooth Sessions is a global growth thought leadership platform. And tonight, we expect to deliver something super special. Discussing topics that are relevant to your businesses. In true Klarna style, we have an amazing evening planned, absolutely packed with insights, information, and excitement and entertainment. I can't tell you how pleased I am with the great panel we have put together this evening. And I can't wait to hear the wisdom from Julie Bishop, Nick Youngquest, Deborah Papazoglou, and Natasha Belling, as we discuss the art of reinvention. After the year we've all been through, I'm sure all of you can imagine that there's a lot we can talk about. While we're relatively new in Australia, Klarna has 15 years of global experience across 17 markets. We've been on our own reinvention journey, transitioning from a payment provider into a truly unique and fully immersive shopping ecosystem, focused on building an emotional connection with consumers and then driving those consumers to our retailers. Consumers and merchants have really responded well, and we've built a strong platform for future growth, with over 600,000 customers and 500 integrated merchants in just 12 months. To all the amazing retailers, ecosystem partners, industry bodies, Clownauts, and our other partners, thank you. Your input and support have been instrumental and are great for our strong first year. In particular, I'd like to acknowledge our amazing joint venture partners, the Commonwealth Bank of Australia, led by Matt Common, who is here with us tonight, and Stuart Munro, who works very closely with us. To the entire CBA team, we couldn't ask for a better partner. You were instrumental to our arrival in Australia and the strong momentum we have built thus far. For too long, the payment scene in Australia has been comfortable and, dare I say it, complacent. Sometimes it seems there is more focus on the payment providers and their valuations, and not enough focus on the hard-working retail businesses that are fighting every day to win consumer attention, loyalty, and sometimes just to survive. Klarna is determined to be different. It's time for a shake-up, for a breath of fresh air, and that is genuinely focused on amazing retail businesses. That's our focus tonight. In fact, that's our focus each and every day at Klarna. We see enormous strength, resilience, and innovation in the Australian retail industry. That's why we're proud to be here, and we're absolutely committed to partnering with you and the success into the future. Thank you again for joining us this evening. Enjoy the conversation. Let's all get out there, get shopping, and continue to build great Australian businesses. And with that, I'd like to hand you over to Natasha Belling, our host for this evening.
Hi everyone, how are you? Thank you very much, Fran, for that lovely welcome. How great is it to be at a real life event and see people in real life? I'm so excited, I can't tell you. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. It's my great pleasure, as Fran mentioned, my name is Natasha Belling. I'm thrilled to be your MC for tonight's very special occasion, the Klarna Smoooth Sessions event, where we have a stellar lineup of guests tonight to chat about one very hot topic at the moment, and that is the art of reinvention, a phrase many of us have certainly experienced and embraced, especially over the past 12 months. A big thank you to the wonderful team at Klarna for putting tonight together and giving us this wonderful opportunity. A big round of applause for the wonderful team at Klarna. Tonight we'll have the chance to speak to some of the best brains in our wonderful country and their secrets to mastering this new age art form, some may say, of reinvention. No one could have predicted the events that have unfolded in 2020 and continue to do so throughout this year. But can I say yet again how incredibly lucky we are on an international stage to be where we are with COVID. It is truly extraordinary. There's been a lot of uncertainty and upheaval, but a lot of silver linings in many of the circumstances. The once-in-a-century pandemic has forced many of us to not only reinvent ourselves, our work lives and personal lives, but also it's given us the opportunity to reflect on our relationships, our businesses, our goals and our dreams and our hopes for the future, and working out how to nail perfect lighting in that Zoom call. So what does it take to reinvent? And when your world is turned upside down, what are some of the secrets to making lemonade out of those lemons and turning challenges around to life lessons and achieving excellent outcomes on both a professional and personal front? We are absolutely thrilled, I am so excited about this, to be joined tonight by the Honourable Julie Bishop. Big round of applause, please. Our nation's, of course, first deputy female leader of the Liberal Party and our nation's first female foreign minister. After 20 years as a very successful corporate lawyer, Julie turned to politics and reached the second highest office in our country. And after 20 years in Canberra, Julie resigned and is now reaching new heights on the outside world and absolutely loving it. Many would say she is the master of reinvention. Julie doesn't believe in regrets, but she has many wonderful stories to share and some great life advice. After our chat with Julie, we'll be joined on the panel by Fran Herrera, country head, as we heard earlier, from Klarna, Australia and New Zealand, Nick Youngquist, the founder of Athletes for Life, and Deborah Hapazoglu, the head of multi-channel digital JD Sports. I've had the chance to chat with them beforehand, and I promise you it will be a fabulous chat later tonight. After our chat with our panel, we will then open the floor to questions. So when you have the chance to ask questions from our web-based platform, Slido, more information on that in just a moment. But now let's get down to business. It's my great pleasure to introduce our first guest for tonight, as I mentioned earlier, the Honourable Julie Bishop. As I mentioned, Julie has made history on many fronts. Almost there. As you're walking up, I'll do the intro. In 2014, Julie led the international response to the downing of Malaysian Airlines flight MH17 over Ukraine and was awarded the Commander of the Order of Merit of the Netherlands Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Takes a long time to read your bio because you're an overachiever. Before entering politics, Ms Bishop was managing partner of the law firm Clayton Utz in Perth. Since resigning from politics in 2018, Julie has continued to soar in the education and corporate sectors and has also established the boutique advisory firm Julie Bishop and Partners. Welcome, Julie, to the stage.
Where am I sitting, this one?
Julie's been lucky to be in WA in lockdown where they never let anyone out, so...
The People's Republic of Western Australia. They don't let you in, they don't let you out. And every time the government locks us in for another 4 days, their popularity goes through the roof. Western Australians love it. They would secede. They would secede, no question.
How are you?
I am fabulous. I'm loving life. I'm so excited to be here. Do you know this is the first time I've been to Sydney since COVID disrupted our lives? I was here in February 2020 and I used to be a regular visitor, and it's so exciting. Sydney hasn't changed. In fact, it looks more beautiful. I love being here.
It's just the people in the room.
Well, that helps. It does.
We're here to talk about the art of reinvention. I mentioned earlier, you are the master of reinvention. You've had 20 years as a corporate lawyer, 20 years as a politician. Gosh, I bet you're glad.
Another
you're
20
not there
years
at the
in the
moment.
private sector. That's
Yes,
the plan.
That's exactly right. What do you think the key is to reinvention? Because sometimes, you know, there used to be the old school thought, you stayed in the one job forever. That's now not the way to go.
Absolutely not. And I think we have to be prepared to transition from one career to another, from one job to another. And there are so many things that disrupt our lives. I mean, technology, for a start, disrupts the way we live, the way we work, connect, engage. But I've also seen life as a series of sliding door moments. And when an inconsequential act or event suddenly changes the whole trajectory of your life or your career, and you've got to be able to adapt. I think it helps knowing who you are, and I know that sounds a bit strange, but being confident in who you are so that you know your strengths, you know your weaknesses, you know what you have to do if your life is disrupted and you do have to transition to do something else. And believe me, I've had some sliding door moments.
What would be a crucial sliding door moment you could share?
Probably the change from law into politics. I wasn't planning to go into politics at all. In fact, I'd been elected the managing partner of my law firm back in Perth, first woman to take on the role. And in fact, I was the only female partner in a firm of about 25 male partners. It's been the story of my life, actually. 2013, I was the only female member in the cabinet. Can you believe it? Anyway, back to 1994. And I was elected managing partner, and I realised that I knew a lot about being a lawyer, but not so much about running a business. So I took a sabbatical and I went to Harvard Business School in the US to pick up the skills that I didn't have. And so it was all about, going into corporate life, I guess. And one day, the lecturer said to our group, "How many of you have thought of going into public office?" And there were people from all around the world. And suddenly it hit me. That's what I want to do. You've got to be very careful what you wish for, because within 2 years I had left the law, I put aside any thoughts of a corporate career, and I was the member for Curtin in the House of Representatives in Canberra. But in retrospect, I'd actually been brought up to believe that entering public office is, a high calling, and that if you did get the opportunity to dedicate your effort, your energy, your ability to the betterment of your community or your state or your country, then that was something worth doing.
How important is resilience in that scenario?
Essential, absolutely essential. And I think resilience comes back to knowing your strengths, knowing what you can achieve, not letting others define who you are and what you can achieve. Set your own standards and then work hard to achieve them.
And what about, you mentioned before you took a sabbatical. I think we often underestimate that because we're bang, bang, bang all the time, a time schedule, and we don't have that time to step back from a creative point of view and think, okay, what's next and what's my plan?
I couldn't agree more. And if we don't take long service leave, for example, that is an absolute tragedy, because I know, long service leave is forced on you. If you don't take it, you're crazy. You have to be able to sit back and reflect on what you're doing, where you're going. It'd be nice to do that every year, but to seriously take time out, be away from your family and friends. I went all the way.
I'm happy with that. We've been in lockdown, homeschooling.
Yeah. It was a luxury, yes, but it was very important to me, and it's a time in my life that I would never have changed. To have that, ended up being 4 months, the advanced management program, and just to have that time away to reflect on what I was doing with my life, my career. What did I really want to do? What made me happy? What made me get up in the morning and think, can't wait to get to work? And I decided it was going to be politics.
And what about a support team? I think sometimes you don't recognise what skill set you may have, and that whether that's a mentor or looking outside the square to think, okay, what is my skill set and where am I going next?
Mentors, I think, are absolutely essential for your peace of mind, for guidance, for indications of what you're good at. I mean, self-analysis is one thing, but it's so good to have somebody who doesn't have an alternate agenda or an ulterior motive, that actually just cares about you and what happens to you and is prepared to give objective but constructive advice. And so I've had mentors throughout my life, and it actually empirically does show that people who have mentors do feel more comfortable in their job, they're more likely to get promotions, they're more likely to get job satisfaction in that sense. But also I think in life, having somebody that you can rely on, a shoulder to lean on, is very important for us all.
I think a silver lining from the pandemic has been, no matter how much we want to control things, we actually can't control everything that happens in our life. And I think as a generation, we've had a pretty good time. We haven't faced many huge challenges like previous generations have.
That's true.
Do you think that's a silver lining, the fact that sometimes you can only stress about what you can control?
I think it has been a lesson for all of us that even though we'd been planning, as in leaders around the world, the WHO had been planning for a global pandemic for years. I can't tell you the number of meetings I went to as we talked about what we were going to do when a global pandemic hit. When it actually occurred, nobody had a framework, nobody had a blueprint. Countries around the world were making it up as they went along, some of them still are, and there was no global leadership. But what it did do is make every country turn inward, which I would normally say is a bad thing, but they did, to work out how they were going to get through it. And I think the citizens of each country have had to, in many ways, reprioritise what's important, what's not, what can I live without, what can I do to help others. I think history will judge this period in a very interesting way. Sure, it's been devastating for so many people, and economically it's going to take a very long time to recover. But don't you thank God that you're living in Australia every single day?
We've done, big round of applause, we've done so incredibly well on the international stage. Julie, the other thing that I've found very interesting during the pandemic is I think it's been a test of leadership.
Oh, yes.
Who do you think has soared? And there's lots of leaders in this room. Who do you think has soared, firstly? And second of all, what qualities do you think makes a great leader?
Well, you know what has surprised me as a former federal politician is how powerful the state premiers have become. Who would have thought? All of a sudden, they're household names.
But the residents love their local leaders.
They love their local leaders. And we've got an election coming up next week in Western Australia, and Sportsbet's already closed the book. That's no fun. So the premiers have the beautiful Gladys Berejiklian, I think she's been extraordinary. She's so calm, she's so cool. I was watching Gladys's press conferences.
We were talking about this before. At
I was watching
every morning. I was thinking, I just want to see what Gladys is saying.
That was 5 a.m. for me. I loved it. So the state premiers have shown extraordinary leadership. I think the idea of a national cabinet was a very clever idea on the part of the Prime Minister, although it hasn't quite fulfilled what I think it hasn't fulfilled its potential. Around the world, though, haven't we seen some extraordinary leadership styles and...
I actually...
Where am I going here?
Please explain.
Well, we lived through Donald Trump drinking disinfectant, and we had some very unusual responses. One of my favourite world leaders, name drop, ding, is Boris Johnson. And he's endlessly entertaining, and he's always talking about the misadventures that he has around the world. And he's highly intelligent, usually underestimated. But boy, I felt sorry for him when there he was making out there's no COVID, and he's hugging people and kissing them and having a lovely, just being Boris. And then suddenly he comes down with COVID, and I thought, you can't script this. You just can't script it. Poor boy. And then he, in the middle of having yet another baby, he was... Well,
Have we lost count?
Well, at least he knows this one.
Oh, my goodness. I have a podcast every morning, Your Morning Agenda, and I'm going to use this audio, so...
No, Boris is the first to say it. I've just never known a politician like this. When they say, well, Prime Minister Johnson, you do have 5 children. He says, oh, that I know of. And I just cry laughing because I think, could you imagine in
That's
Australia?
why he's so stressed with his hair.
Yeah. I've seen him do that.
Talking about reinvention,
Yes.
do you think Canberra needs to be reinvented?
Oh, wow. And you've got a podcast tomorrow morning?
And I'm using this audio.
And you're using this audio. Okay. Well, what's been going on in the last few weeks is unspeakably sad. It makes me feel very empty to think that the latest allegation involves a young woman who took her own life. A senior cabinet minister is accused of a very serious crime. The New South Wales Police, who are the appropriate authority to investigate that kind of crime, have closed the case. And I just think there are no winners in this. The family I see have called for more inquiry into the incident. And as I understand it, the South Australian coroner is considering an inquest. So if there is to be further scrutiny, that is obviously the next step. But as far as Canberra is concerned, a lot's being said about the culture, the workplace environment. And it seems to me that if Canberra is where the laws are made, if politicians are the legislators who, amongst other things, make laws about workplace behaviour, surely Parliament House should be the model employer. It should be the model workplace. And clearly it is not. And it's been failing a number of people who work there. So I think what we've seen over the last few weeks is a reflection of a very outdated culture and conventions and attitudes that need to be changed. And reinvention is one way of putting it, but I think that people had better focus on their rights, their responsibilities, and creating the best possible workplace environment as one should expect of the National Parliament. So I think that there will need to be some significant changes. And people have been talking about this for a long time. I mean, I was in politics for 20 years and this topic was raised often about bullying and harassment. It's a very hostile, combative, intimidating environment in Parliament. And yet, if we don't change as a result of the last few weeks' allegations, what does it take?
What do you think needs to happen for it to change? Would you like an independent inquiry?
Well, I think there, in terms of the workplace situation, because if I put Christian Porter's case to one side, the allegations occurred 30 years ago before he was in Parliament. But if I focus on the more recent allegations about sexual assault in the workplace, quite clearly the message has to be reinforced that if you are a victim of a sexual assault, a rape, a crime in the workplace, you must report it to the police. And the employer has a duty, in my mind, if they are told that this occurred, or I allege that this occurred, and you've been told and you're seized with that information, you have a duty not only to the victim, but also to the others in the workplace to report it to the police. Now, if that person, if the victim does not want to press charges or for some reason wants their privacy protected, that's a matter between them and the police, or their lawyers and the police. But the employer, in this case, ministers, Parliament House, must report it to the police. And I would hope that we see a change in that people understand you don't cover up significant criminal offences, you don't cover up illegal behaviour, you report it to the authority that has the competence and the ability to investigate it. So I hope that message gets through. Secondly, I think we need to see more inductions and training in Parliament. They don't do it. There aren't induction programs, there aren't training programs. And then they should be followed up with more support, more training. I also think there needs to be an independent counselling service. Political parties are very adversarial, and given what's at stake, you know, who leads the country, the parties are exceedingly combative, and they will go to any length to protect their party's political prospects. And in that culture, in that environment, you clearly need an independent counselling service and independent investigations. Now, if you were talking about independent investigation in relation to the Christian Porter matter, that is really problematic. We have a criminal justice system, and that criminal justice system is best placed to investigate such alleged crimes, because the checks and balances are in there. You know, centuries of checks and balances. When you go outside that, it becomes very problematic. So that's why I think the next obvious step is for the coroner of South Australia to determine whether or not he'll hold an inquest.
Julie, in regards to reinvention, we're talking about that and we spoke extensively about culture in Canberra and culture in workplaces. Do you think we're at a turning point in our history right now with reinvention? Because we have had many silver linings coming from COVID.
I think in terms of gender equality, I think that we will see change. I used to say to my very male colleagues that one of these days they'll work out that 50% of the voting population is female. There's a pool of votes out there that would support a party that embraces and supports women. It's, if you want to look at it in purely political terms, apart from being the right thing to do, it's the smart thing to do, to be supportive of over 51% of the population.
Smart poll. I could talk to you all night. I'm getting in trouble.
They're winding us up.
Can we please give Julie Bishop a big round of applause, Julie? Thank you very much. We're now going to invite the other panellists up as well. Constantly getting told to wind up, wind up.
I was just getting started.
I know. So as we get settled, we're just about to introduce the rest of the panel, but I mentioned earlier that we have the opportunity to put our questions to the floor, which is great. You can ask some questions as well. Just, are you technically minded with these Slido apps? And here we go.
Yeah, I'm looking.
So
where am I looking?
We
Over
would
there.
love you to get involved. Here on the screen is the link right now to put into your browser on your mobile phone and enter the event ID. For those who are joining us remotely, welcome. All you need to do is click the link underneath the live feed on the online event page and you are right through to the correct area. Here you're able to send us through any questions you may have for our panel tonight and we'll show them on the screen.
Don't you love this?
Later. I love it.
Don't you love this? It's so efficient. Ah. I remember the old days when people would stand up in the audience and harangue you and shout, and
We can
then
still organise that.
they'd have to be escorted out by security, and it was so exciting. Now,
Technology. It's now my great pleasure to welcome our panel of guests tonight. Firstly, Deborah Papazoglou. Please welcome Deborah. Deborah has been a well-respected and recognised leader in the online retail industry for more than a decade. You have many fans in the audience. Deb is currently part of the leadership team at global retail giant JD Sports, where she is responsible for end-to-end online business expansion and growth across 5 countries. Welcome, Deb. We're so excited. Our next panellist today, of course, welcoming Fran back to the stage. Fran is the country head for Klarna Australia and New Zealand. And also Nick Youngquist, welcome to the stage. Nick is a former professional athlete, charity and brand ambassador. As founder of Athletes for Life, Nick is now using his first-hand experience. This is a really interesting topic on how athletes reinvent themselves and transition from professional sport into life outside sport. Big round of applause for our wonderful panellists again. Deb, I'm going to ask you the first question.
Lucky me.
There's been so many highs and lows to 2020. What I loved, you said to me before, that in being a leader, you think a great quality is being honest. And you were very honest with your staff saying, actually, guys, I have no idea what's going to happen tomorrow during the pandemic. Why did you want to do that?
Well, I guess a lot of people can probably relate to me working in retail and digital. 2020, everyone turned to me in the digital department going, okay, Deb, what's going to happen? And I'm like, wow, that was a trying time for me because I was working across 5 countries, different time zones, different government regulations, the stores opening, stores closing, and that huge business weight was kind of on my shoulders to kind of lead. And you know, you don't know what's going on, so you have to be honest. And I think people value that honesty when you can say to them, look, I don't actually know what's going to happen today, but we're going to do this. We're going to work through this. And I've got so many learnings out of last year, and I'd love to talk about it. But some key things for me were constraints. Constraints actually force creativity. And I know that sounds silly, but in business we go, we've got a hurdle here, we can't do that, we can't do this because there's all these things in front of us. But actually, when you have a constraint, it gives you that another perspective, a different lens to keep pushing and looking at problems in a different way. And I think 2020 was really about that. And retail, it needed a nudge. Let's be real, we talk about business plans, we talk about roadmaps, we talk about getting things done, and yes, it goes on and on and on. But 2020, we all got in there, we focused, we tested, we learned, we pivoted and reiterated in real time. And those learnings came straight away. And especially from a JD perspective, we really flexed, we focused. We didn't care about what our competitors were doing. It was just like, well, what is the consumer actually telling us at this point? Let's make our decisions based on that. And one key thing I want to share with you guys is, in finishing my MBA, my professor on the first day said to me, he said, Deborah, you're going to be faced with topics that you're not sure about. You're going to be faced, with businesses, frameworks, difficult situations that you're not really close to. And that's going to feel really uncomfortable, and you're going to get that stomach pain, right? And I'm sure we've all had that pain where we've been in a meeting or we've been somewhere and we're like, oh, we don't know where this is going. But he said, that is when you're learning. That is no textbook, no literature can teach you that feeling. That is when you're going to go, okay, I'm actually progressing and I'm actually moving. And I never forget that, even though it's a simple term. And I think 2020 was all about that. It was that stomach pain, but it was such a good learning and and every time that happens to me, and even before this stage, I had that pain and I was thinking, Deborah, you're learning, you're moving forward. So I think, so.
There you go.
If you guys can, next time you have that pain tomorrow in a meeting, just think of me and saying, I'm actually learning. This is really great. So
I think COVID-19 was actually great for the retail sector here as well, because I've been living overseas for the better part of a decade, and I come back here and we have to go into the brick and mortar stores. I was like, what the hell is that? I buy everything on Amazon, I buy it online, right? So I think it's been a great pivot for you guys more generally, right?
Yeah. For you, Fran, what have been the highs and lows? I think, as we heard Deb say there, it's pushed us ahead. The whole argument about flexible workplaces, it could never happen. Yeah. We've seen it can happen, but then also there's the important thing of creativity. You have to have conversations face to face. How do you balance that with working from home or flexible working?
Yeah, well, we launched, and 3 weeks later, welcome pandemic. So we literally had to turn our entire launch campaign on its head. We had a full out-of-home experience planned for the Australian community, and we basically decided that what we needed to do was respect Australians and what they were going through, and we really likened it, I guess, to the 7 stages of grief. And so what we did was we completely flipped, went into below-the-line mode, and actually let people do what they needed to do. From a business perspective, we built our entire team remotely. Most of us only met each other in October, when we were fortunate enough to actually get together for the very first time. So 50 of us were actually introduced, onboarded and inducted in a completely remote environment. So not only were we a brand new company in this incredible country, but trying to teach all of our Klarnauts all about the company and what we do and how we operate remotely was, it was challenging, but I think everybody embraced it, and look at what we've achieved in such a short time.
What was your greatest lesson you learnt during this reinvention process during COVID?
There's so many lessons. I think the greatest lesson is that you just have to pivot, and you need to embrace.
I haven't heard that word before.
No. I think you just have to embrace. At the end of the day, whatever's thrown your way, the best thing you could possibly do is break it down into bite-sized chunks and work out how you're going to overcome it, because there's nothing that's too big. If you break it down, you can overcome anything.
Nick, for you, as I mentioned earlier, I think you're in a fascinating business, because often there's not a lot of people that understand as an elite athlete. Many people that don't understand it say, why can't they transition back to a corporate life or a corporate job? Explain how difficult that is and what support mechanisms they have. Yeah,
the difficult nature, I think Julie touched on before, is that this missing link with their identity, right? Where they fit into the real world more broadly, and their added value various different aspects of life, whether it be personally, professionally. For me, it was super challenging to see my worth, even though I fairly seamlessly transitioned into different aspects of life. I didn't feel like I fitted in. I probably more broadly don't feel like I fit in here with you wonderful women up here as well.
Not true.
It wasn't until I got this understanding of really harnessing and embracing the uncertainty, right? Putting myself out there and doing things that were uncomfortable, where I started to realize. I think we have the proclivity to kind of see challenges or uncertainty as like a barrier to growth. Whereas, you know, the most fascinating minds in this world and the greatest people who do reinvent themselves see it as a vehicle for change, right? And you know, all these fascinating women up here are doing that in their relative industries. It wasn't until I really embraced that I could kind of get out there and do it for myself. I mean, my business partner Mitch is sitting in this room with me. I had a presentation on my computer that I was terrified to show him for 5 years. Like, this is crazy, right? And it is harder for the general population to kind of empathise more broadly with how athletes feel after retirement. But, you know, there is a missing link there, and we're trying to really empower people along that spectrum. So,
How do you put that missing link back there? What's the secret to that?
it goes back to authenticity, right? And being authentic, understanding your identity, understanding your added value, and authenticity is the key to everything, right? You know, a lot of the psychology shows that the more authentic we are, the more fruitful and wholehearted lives we're living. Brene Brown's research into this shows that embracing your vulnerability and embracing uncertainty in ways that is going to facilitate growth.
Julie, your thoughts on that?
I couldn't agree more. I think that some of the wisest advice I received, unfortunately it was halfway through my political career, I wish I'd learned it earlier, was, as I said earlier, not to let others define who you are. There are plenty of people out there who will set for you standards and benchmarks that they couldn't or wouldn't meet themselves. And so you have to be comfortable with your style, comfortable with who you are, and live that life. Don't try and be somebody else. I always say to women, particularly women in pretty tough careers, if you think you have to be a man, you're wasting a woman. And so you just stay true to yourself. Now, it's easier said than done, but it's been a guiding light for me for quite some years now.
Deb, for you, you were mentioning to me before that with retail, you said that this, you know, pandemic silver lining again gave retail a bump along. Have you been amazed? Because a lot of experts have predicted a lot of things that were going to happen. Like, there were grim outlooks that we were set to face the worst economic conditions since the Great Depression.
Yep.
Our economy is recovering better than anyone expected. On the international scale, not only are we smashing the COVID curve, but our economy is doing incredibly well. For you, were you surprised by how many Australians embrace the online community?
Well, I've always loved online, so that's going to be a weird question for me. But yeah, it was amazing to see the response. And again, coming back to what I said earlier, it was about not focusing on what everyone was doing. That was the key. I think everyone doom, gloom, what's gonna happen? Focusing on what you're doing and taking cues from your customer and seeing how you're gonna react to what they're doing. So until your customer told you any different, it was time to flex and go, you know what, let's use this as an opportunity. And I think that's what we did really well as a business. And, you know, and that's why it turned out so well, especially for, you know, kind of where I'm working now. And we saw this consistently across all the markets, especially the ones I work across, that, you know, just listen to what your consumers are saying, cut out the noise and focus. And it works in that way.
Fran, how important is it? We always talk about the customer's always right, but how important is it to be customer focused?
Oh, I mean, Klarna spends each and every day, you know, hand on heart, I've never worked in an organisation that isn't obsessed with customers, you know, to the extent we are. And customers for us are both our retail partners, our industry partners, and also consumers. And really what we do is we listen to them, we talk to them all the time, and we continually iterate, develop, and change our product to ensure that we're delivering the most seamless experiences to everybody that we work with. And I think that, in today's day and age, the reality is if you don't listen to your customers, then they're not going to stay with you. They're going to go to someone that will listen to them. And I think that's been an amazing opportunity for us in the market. When we did a lot of research on Australia, the thing that ran through all of the feedback from consumers was that they feel that their relationship so far, in terms of the buy now, pay later space, was very transactional. And they were looking for someone to build a relationship with who was going to deliver, personalisation, innovation and perks. And that's been an amazing opportunity for us, being so focused on delivering that. So it's been fantastic.
Nick, for you, what's the biggest lesson that you've learnt in the reinvention process?
In a reinvention process for myself, just manifesting this idea of harnessing my own vulnerability, right? It was what makes me me. And, I unfortunately, not unfortunately, I shouldn't say that. I participated in a sport where you kind of create this cognitive dissonance, if you will, where you kind of act a certain way because you have to act that way to fit in, right? Which was totally against my values. And until I really understood that and started to further embrace that, I realised that I was given this platform with the various things that I've done, whether it be in sport or outside of sport, to advocate for and help the people that I wanted to help. And so once I understood that, I kind of became more empowered to go out and do it.
Nick made an interesting point there, Julie, about values. The process of reinvention is very easy if it aligns with your values. How important is that to be with an organisation or an employer that you're on the same page with?
For me, it was vital. I just tell a little story here. I was a brand new article clerk in a law firm, and in those days, once you got your articles with a firm, that was it. You stayed with that firm. And I was the first woman that had been employed as a lawyer in that firm in its 100-year history. They didn't quite know what to do with me. And on the first Friday night, they had partners' drinks. And my male article clerk was immediately swept up into a group talking about playing golf and everything. So I'm standing at the door. Could have had something to do with the fact that I was wearing a Liberty print frock with bows in my hair, but that's another story. Anyway, so I'm standing there.
Liberty's coming back.
I know.
Anyway.
So there I segue. There I am standing there, and the senior partner came up with a tray and gave it to me and said, "Serve the drinks." And I'm there.
Wow.
Wow.
What did you do to the tray?
Well, I was going to hit him with it, but I served the drinks. I mean, it absolutely took my breath away. But I decided that night that if that was their expectation of me, I was in the wrong firm. And I left. And you just didn't do that in those days. You stayed there and, sucked it up. But I thought, this just doesn't align with who I am. And I think you have to be, every now and then, be really courageous, take risks, but calculated risks. And if you are somewhere where you feel uncomfortable, where it doesn't align, where you're not respected, and you've given it a go and you've tried, then think long and hard about moving on. You're not in the right place. And life's too short to be somewhere where you're unhappy and you don't want to go to work. I've been fortunate. Okay, sometimes in politics, yes, there were days when I'd be in bed, doona, saying, "Please, nobody wake me up. I don't want to face this." But I've always been in careers where I felt passionate about achieving things and have loved it, even though there are highs and lows along the way. But if you're not getting that buzz and that passion and that interest, then take a sabbatical and find somewhere else to work.
Yeah, well said. We're going to take some questions. I'm going to put my glasses on because I want to look more intelligent. It's got nothing to do with my eyesight. I'm 27 now. Okay, so this one, I'm not sure who this is to. We might put this to the whole panel. What is your advice for young female leaders trying to make a mark in a male-skewed industry? Nick?
I don't know if I'm very apt at answering that, but I actually think
we
that
have to ask the...
as leaders, I think that we should be fostering an environment where everyone is able to be themselves, right? So if you're not in an environment where a leader is creating that environment for you and it's not conducive with you leading a more empowered professional life, I would move on. That's mine.
I asked that because men have to be part of the conversation.
I'm not an expert either.
Now, there are male-skewed industries and they're male-dominated industries, so I think it would be different. But I think these days that there's such a focus on promoting women in areas where they haven't previously had influence, that it's a great time for women to exercise their voice, their power, their influence. But it comes with responsibilities, and that includes being on top of your brief, doing your homework. If you've got a great idea, back it up with evidence. Good ideas can be contagious, so be prepared to back your ideas, your submissions, your proposals. Whomever you're presenting to, do the hard work.
Great. Deb, for you, what's your advice?
I'm going to come back to the authenticity point.
Yes.
Because for me, personally, authenticity has always been my superpower. And I truly mean that. I haven't tried to be anything to anyone. I've just tried to be good at what I do, focus on that, and be authentic in the way I talk to people, because let's not all forget we're humans, right? And humans bond with humans. And that's such a key element in business that we miss sometimes, that social equity, that social capital that we have in our organisations. That's what makes you who you are, and just focusing on that and being true to who you are and realising authenticity is not a word on a piece of paper. It is a true superpower if you can harness it and be resilient with it. And that comes back to resilience as well and reinvention, because it's not easy to be real sometimes, especially in the business world, especially in the world we live in. So if you can crack that and be comfortable with that, well, there's your superpower. And I think that's what's always worked kind of in everything that I've done, because I've done it with the true meaning of authenticity. Yeah.
Fran, what would your key piece of advice be for that question?
I think, keeping it really simple in that back yourself and believe that you can do it, because anything's possible if you put your mind to it. I don't think it matters where you are or what you're doing. I think not enough of us are courageous enough to actually back ourselves. I think, Julie makes a very valid point. If you've got facts and you present a business case, no one's going to question facts.
Yeah.
You leave your emotion at the door and you present the facts, and you'll get through anything. So I think back yourselves, and with any might and determination, you can achieve anything that you put your mind to.
Yeah, well said. I've got another question. Oh, this is great. How has the past year redefined how important the human element is to work and business? Nick?
Well, I think it's probably an interesting one for you guys to to think about more broadly when we're going to this more work from home kind of style. And Deb's touched on it. That a lot of businesses out there will say, our people are the cornerstone of who we are, right? So I think it goes back to the drawing board and understanding your why as a business, and then really letting that emanate with your cohort of employees.
Julie?
Well, it's interesting. I found the last 12 months very strange, because my life was about travelling, places constantly. I was always on the move, and suddenly I found myself at home with nobody around me. And when we were in lockdown, my only communication was via Zoom pretty well. And so I was desperate for that kind of human interaction that Deb's talking about. So my family, which is all over Australia, set up a Saturday afternoon. Well, it was Saturday afternoon my time, about 3 o'clock. I had to start drinking at 3 o'clock. And the rest of them were in Sydney and Melbourne and Adelaide, and so it was 6 o'clock, quite a decent hour to be drinking. But anyway, I had to do it for the family.
Of course.
Yeah, I used to play sports.
Yeah,
okay.
so and we had a weekly Zoom meeting with the screen filled up with the family. And I mean, sometimes it'd be months, in the real pre-COVID life before I caught up with my family. But every week we did this, and it was just fantastic. I also think, though, that people have had an opportunity to reflect on priorities, what's important in life. And while technology has been incredibly disruptive and we've embraced it, like who would have thought we would be doing everything online in this way? Nevertheless, I think the human element has been even more important, because when we haven't been able to be with friends and loved ones and everything, you really use technology. You augment your relationships with technology. You don't replace your relationships with technology.
Do you think that's, Deb, for you? Did you do a lot of reflection? I think it's been really interesting that people have had time out to think, okay, where am I going right now?
And that human element and that leadership element, I think, is something in retail specifically that does not get discussed enough. And I tell you why. We all have something common on our P&Ls. That huge cost line, that's the human capital cost line. How many of us actually invest a lot of time in thinking about people, leadership? Just because you have a title doesn't make you a leader. Just because you've been given a promotion, you've got people reporting to you, doesn't mean you're a leader. And I think organisations really need to think about people, because this sounds very cliche, but people make organisations, and we forget this a lot. And you can have the best technology in the world, you can have the best systems in the world, but if the people behind it are not there and passionate about it, it doesn't mean anything. So even events like this, I think over the last 10 years, I've probably say I've been to every e-commerce event out there, and we talk about the technical and the tangible. Tick, great, we all know that. But it's conversations like this that actually spark thinking, and the thinking that we all need working in organisations, and we truly, I think, really miss that element. It's not up to HR to create that human element, it's up to each of us. It's about our values, our liminal thinking as well. So I think if we could just take that away just today and think about, well, what is leadership? How do I become, and one other thing, because I'm very passionate about this topic, is, people think, oh, I'm going to study, yes, I'm going to go work in the top businesses, I'm going to be a great leader. Let me tell you, leadership is not something that you're perfect at, and there's not a time that tells you that you're perfect. It's about that ongoing learning, and I probably shouldn't be saying this next to you, Julie, but yeah, it's that ongoing kind of learning that we have to embrace and know that you're never going to be perfect. And yeah, human element, think about that leadership and that human capital we have in our business, because it's just as important as your technology, as your EBIT profit. It's all of those things. So yeah.
Well said. Now, Fran, for you, you're just nodding your head then. How important is human capital? Because I think some of the best businesses I know, they say it as a cliche, but they actually do incredibly well to retain staff. It's incredibly expensive to employ new staff, but it also creates a great workplace environment.
Absolutely, and I think all the clownauts that are here tonight will tell you that getting into a business like ours, it is a huge investment that we make. Poor Neve, who I know is here tonight, I think she's interviewed over 7,000 people to get the 50 that we are today, because we really invest in the people that we're bringing in. For us, what's really important is to bring them into our world, to understand our operating models and to put them at the centre of what we do. We really invest in work-life balance. We really, I know it's hard, and I know they're all sitting here, work-life balance. But the reality is we do try and make sure that we've got work-life balance. We work with great platforms to provide wellness. We've actually got a great challenge going on in the business at the moment with a platform called Shea Wellness, which is all around building mental resilience, but eating the right foods for the right type. And all of us actually now understand what biology type we are. So if someone comes in and I know they're an activator and I can see they're about to explode, you tell them to go and run up the stairs for 2 minutes and then come back and have a chat to you, and you have a really good conversation. So actually knowing these things and investing in the team to be able to understand how each and everybody works means that we obviously can thrive as a collaborative and structured unit.
How many joggers do you have in your organisation?
Well, we've got a few. There's one over here. There's quite a few of them that are activators, as they're known as, and they need to run and expel that energy so they don't combust.
I could chat to this fabulous panel all night, but we have to wind up. But before we do, just one piece of advice you'd love to leave these beautiful people with tonight on the art of reinvention. Nick, if we start.
For me, it's much like Deb. It's just generally own authenticity and really embrace vulnerability and uncertainty on the pathway to change when it's needed. I think we've had a fabulous conversation here, and I'm really grateful to be here.
Julie, for you?
In the context of reinvention, think through the consequences of any decision you're about to take, the unintended consequences and the actual consequences. I used to have this little framework in my mind in cabinet meetings when we were faced with a decision, and I'd run through what does it cost, what's the evidence, compared to what, and I always had a fourth question: what could possibly go wrong? And that was probably the most important question. In other words, think through the consequences of what you're about to do. Think through the unintended consequences, the impact that it could have on others.
Great advice for you, Deb.
Oh, I've got 3. No. I guess, just reiterating kind of what I said. Don't forget that constraints force creativity. Think about that. The next roadblock that you're faced with, think about, okay, well, how can I be creative with this? Because I truly believe that. Remember what my professor said to me on the first day of my MBA? When you get that gut feeling, that means you're truly learning, and you're feeling uncomfortable. That's learning and reinvention. And don't forget about your human capital that's in your business, and we're all responsible for being good leaders and bringing that to an organisation. So don't forget that social equity and that people make organisations. So that would be my 3 takeaways.
Fran, for you?
I think for me, it's about just there's nothing you can't overcome. I think it's really about going, a bit like what Deb said, but go with your gut. If you make a mistake, it's not a big deal. Like, as long as you fail fast, learn from it. And I think taking small steps, and one of our leadership principles is start small, learn fast. And the whole principle behind that is just give things a go and see where it goes. And if it works, then iterate and develop and continue with it. And if it doesn't, well, then pivot and turn and change. And I think that there needs to be a lot more of that. And I think the other thing is, talking about people, one of the best things we did because we were building a team remotely was we actually know about each other. Not about work, but we actually know who's got kids, who doesn't have kids, who loves sport, who loves drinking, who loves whatever it is that they love. At the end of the day, people are people, and I think that one of the best things that's come out of the pandemic is actually learning about the true people that we are, and not just the business person in your business. And I think people should continue really making sure that that stays a key priority for business.
A big round of applause for our fabulous guests tonight, Deborah, Fran, Nick and Julie.